Good evening. How are you? Holly and I went up to Baltimore, Maryland today for her test, and they went well. And so we were much encouraged by it. But it's a long trek, and we got back when it was too dark to go walking around. And our energy about driving, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours each way. But it's worth it because it's an early warning sign and it's a reaffirmation of what we're doing when the results turn out well. So we enjoyed that very much. I think that one of the things that we can do on a day-to-day basis to inform ourselves as citizens and as persons who are being taken lightly by some elected officials is to see how events play into what is good or bad for America and for us, the citizens. And we've talked about Citizens United. So we have the established concern that people who treat money as free speech and who have a lot of it, billions of dollars, can distort the system by basically buying results that they want. So that's why I think we should be calling the case Plutocrats United. Now, we're also aware not only of this bad Supreme Court decision, no surprise there, but that we have data points, facts that play into the corruption of money in politics. So we've heard Trump said to oil and gas, I believe it was in April, raise me $1 billion and drill, baby, drill. Now, I think that if that conversation actually reflects the one he had, I think it's criminal and should be the subject of investigation. But it's playing out, notwithstanding the, shall we say, pliable aspects of our law enforcement system failing to do anything about what was said. Now, Harold Hamm, Hamm, he's a founder of Continental Resources, and he has been dialing for dollars in the millions. And I don't know how much he's raised, but there's something like 20 plus $million that are coming from oil and gas. Not quite a billion yet, but again, there's a lot of money that gets hidden in these games, and that's what we're up against. And now, one of the things that we usually say about people who fund themselves with enormous amounts of money is make them spend it all and to no good end. So if the message doesn't work and the people sending it are known for what they're doing and they're trying to do us in, and we know it, then the dollar shouldn't have any effect. If the public is both rational and less emotional than the crazed people who ignore facts and law and logic. And the Drill Baby Drill campaign comes without taking any precautions that would save you and I from the bad effects of this in the water, in the air, in the products that are made from this, destroying countrysides and doing it near and dear to you. I have in the past fought the effort to take pipelines and to carry from West Virginia through Virginia and Maryland up to New Jersey power that comes from West Virginia, because if that kind of power was taken from the region in New Jersey, it would be outlawed, but by coming from West Virginia, it was not. And we had some great allies in that, and we basically asked the question, would this additional drilling be the tipping point from which we could not recover? And if you say it in a way that evokes what's really at stake, for example, breathe if you must, then you're getting at the core question. So this is one example, because we're only finding out today or yesterday about Hamm's efforts fulfilling the April meeting at Mar-a-Lago. So we have to ask ourselves why some find the facts so slowly. It's like unearthing those that we've recently discovered died in AD 79, overcome and buried in pumice and ash from Vesuvius eruption. So that's why we should celebrate those who fight. Another example of the middle class getting the raw result was figured in the recent conversation between Trump and Musk. And the question was, what did Musk at Tesla do with regard to the United Auto Workers? And basically, he was telling them to sit down and shut up. And Trump was endorsing the view, this is Mr. Middle Class, right? The guy who's helping the working man and woman. And he was saying, well, they want to go out and strike? Fine. Then just hire other people. Just say that they're fired. This is the notion that both Trump and Musk and the Republican Party, basically in the leadership, believe is true, which is the middle class is to do their job and shut up and not object, that they should get a share of the profit from their productivity that makes the capital and the billionaires so successful. So there's another example. We have how money is used to distort politics and how people running their businesses don't want to be fair to the workers. And by the way, the United Auto Workers is suing in connection with those kinds of directions. An unfair labor practice, I believe, is their theory. Years ago, I did a lot of labor law. I still do some, mostly individuals, and not groups. But, So what other indicators do we have that the women are being victimized? And I don't say this lightly. And of all places, Texas, we have another effect, which is unsurprising in the post-Roe v. Wade period in America, ever since the world was changed by Justice Alito and members of the Supreme Court. Now, if you're unlucky or you're just paying attention, I suppose, you would know what an ectopic pregnancy is. It's a pregnancy that occurs outside the uterus, and it is never viable for that reason. So what about that? Well, what you want to do is to prevent the fallopian tubes from rupturing, because if they do and they bleed, you literally risk the life of the person involved. Now, I'm familiar with this up close and personal because Holly had an ectopic pregnancy. But she was at a hospital that knew what to do. Still, we were anxious because at first you don't know what it is. Then you have the pain, and then you go in, and they tell you, and it's usually an emergency procedure. And it was for Holly, and she succeeded. But it is, for all intents and purposes, considered by some an abortion, even though it's not possibly viable given its mislocation in a fallopian tube. And there are women in Texas who are risking the fact they may never have children, and they cannot have a child that is not going to be sustained in an ectopic pregnancy. So this is the kind of detail that informs us that what we're up against is a craven group of people who believe in a religious myth, and because of that religious myth that your existence as a person believes at conception, which is the fecundation of an ovum, Can you imagine that they would make a woman who doesn't have a life and being, and they call it an unborn person, meaning it's not a person. It's unborn. It is potentially something. And I think it was Sartre, it's 2 days in a row, he comes to my mind, who basically said, in the nihilistic frame of reference after World War II, that you are potentially nothing. You are only what you've done, which would be a good rule to apply to almost all politicians. What have you done for us lately? And I don't mean this in a terrible way. You're telling us that you are a person who loves public service and want to serve. How are you doing? And if you're really good at it, we want to support you, like Waltz or like Kamala. People who have spent most of their life, and it doesn't have to be most of their life, but that's the kind of connection that we want to make. I'm upset that we're having a discussion, a public discussion about a subject that drives me crazy, and maybe you. You are welcome to your individual beliefs and whatever you want to believe, from helicopters delivering heavenly presences to walking on water to resurrections after 3 days, all of that. That's fine. Just don't impose it on me. Don't try to tell me that transubstantiation means the molecules of a piece of bread become the flesh of Jesus. Don't tell me that. Although they tortured bishops to have them believe that. Okay, so you can believe all those things. Just don't bring it to me. Don't expect me to believe it. But we have in this nation people who hide behind religion and say, oh, you have to trust us, even as they misquote the Bible. We care about people, even as they discriminate in a variety of ways, even as they would punish them and exclude them. And true, there have been, particularly in the civil rights days, churches and people of God who, for the right reasons, cared that we all be treated equal, the early promise of our Declaration of Independence and what our promise is for this country to other people. But the accidents, meaning those things that should not matter to your advocacy, which is, it's not about God invoking in our secular society a result that favors community and justice and equality and rightness. It is that we, the people, make these things happen, and that a person's religion has nothing to do with it. It may be their individual motivation, but keep it separate, both because of the First Amendment and because of what we've learned from the data points of those nations that become theocracies and how they destroy one another over the most bizarre questions in religion. We don't need that. We don't need it. We shouldn't have it. And it compromises our nation. And going from Jefferson forward and all the places in between, we have resisted and fought it when we've done the right thing. Now, these people, and I'm talking about Trump and JD, whatever the hell he is, whatever his name is this week, these people would govern us, but they can't govern themselves. All they want to do is to win. And I have no problem with ambition. I've spent a fair amount of my life with people with ambition. I've had some ambition. But what is your standard by which you participate in the actions and passions of the day? And if the only thing you want to do is to obtain an end in which you realize power unto yourself, that's a very weak thing. I was talking about Trump yesterday and his absurdity as a public person, in which his life is truly meaningless, because everything that he uses as signals to us that he claims to care about, he doesn't, as evidenced by his actions. Makes me Sartre's kicking around in my head. You are potentially nothing. You are only what you've done. It doesn't necessarily mean good works for those who think their actions are only good if it's informed by their religion. You know, whether you pick up Seneca or the New Testament or the Bhagavad Gita, or you look at nature and you feel a thing that's necessary and right to do and you do it, if you have all of those things, then you understand what public service is. But if you look inside yourself and there's no depth, you run up against a block right underneath your chin, and there's nothing underneath there, nothing. It's a vacuum. You're not connected to other people. You don't care about other people. You only care about yourself, and you want to dominate. Why? To compensate for that vast, gasping chasm in your person. Is that the person we want to be president? I don't think so. Now, day by day, we're going to see people get jammed up by what they've done for Trump and for these people, these variety of Christo-fascists and far right-wing people and gun fetishists and all the different characters who come together because of their empty lives. And hopefully people who think they support Trump will take another look at this pairing that I really think can take our government into the future. And we're talking, of course, about Kamala and Tim. And these two people are leaders. They represent what's best about us now. Will we find that they're imperfect in some way? Maybe, but imperfection is not itself an offense. It can be. And some one thing that you've done, despite all the good things you've done, can make the difference in defining a public character. So let's take a clerk in Colorado. She was convicted on 7 of 10 charges having to do with allowing the copying of voting records. She had claimed she was innocent and so forth. But justice, if not destroyed, and if it persists, and it cuts down the lawbreakers, making them face a sentence, jail time perhaps, a loss of reputation, a payment of fines, the indignity of the entire process. This is actually restorative for what America is supposed to be about. So look day by day at the data points that indicate by the actions or lack of actions by Republicans at every level, including their ticket, and say to yourself, is that the kind of zoo that we want for a government? Or do we want people who've been in government, love government, have served publicly, want to serve publicly, are ambitious but in a good way, who tell us the truth because they believe that's the only way to make decisions that are public? So, as we say these days, when we fight, we win. So get out there and fight. All the best. Bye-bye.